Well, good evening, guys, and welcome to another episode of The Gentleman's Club. I'm back here with my co-host, GTG, and today our special guest on The Gentleman's Club is our lovely intern, Mick, who does a lot of our research and development, as well as he gets the coffee for us. He's a great intern. How's it going, gentlemen? How are you?
Great. Absolutely great. Like I said, heavy sugar, heavy cream, Mick. Very much appreciated.
Yes, sir. And Asian proper, how would you like yours?
You know, I always like my coffee black, just like Cat.
Amazing. So amazing. Ham it too, though. Don't forget that. Ham it also.
That's right. He likes that good old long stroke from good old Tyrone.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I have the orders correct, gentlemen. We have one mulatto extra cream, and we have one Tyrone.
Sounds correct.
Absolutely.
So, Mick, you brought us an interesting write-up that you went ahead and developed over the last couple weeks. Why don't you give us a little bit of background on why you had this write-up over DSP, and why don't you, after you give us a little base on the write-up, let us know what made you join the Gentleman's Club?
Well, I realized that we had a surplus in the budget and decided to divest some of those funds into the research and development department, thinking that maybe if we better understand the thing that we're observing, we can better find a cure. I do think that the gout is contagious, contrary to popular belief in some medical circles. It's obviously hereditary, thanks, Aunt. And I really want to eventually work my way up to being the head of gouter measures, or you can call it the head of gouter terrorism, whichever one you think is better there. And so I did this write-up about the body language and the word usage of DSP when he's talking about things that we know to be lies. And some of it did hit a little bit close to home, given personal things that I have gone through in the past 18 months to 2 years. And I believe that that was the inspiration for me to do this write-up and hopefully find a cure, or at least find a way to keep the virus from spreading. The pignosis, I think, is out of control to the point where we're just going to see a complete change in the ecosystem. It obviously can infect whales. We've seen that a couple of times. So I am working with a few marine biologists to figure out why it's infecting whales like it is. And I think if we don't kind of nip it in the bud now, it'll become self-sustaining. So that's really what inspired me.
Well, that sounds fantastic. Now, with your whole write-up and diving into the whole pig roach mentality, how did you stay sane during your stint there?
Copious amounts of therapy bills was really the first part of it. The second part of it really was drugs and alcohol, to be perfectly honest. There was a good amount of, well, I shouldn't say drugs. I should say herbal supplements. And the herbal supplements definitely helped. I go to kind of a holistic doctor, someone who's a little bit more new age, and that really helped me not retain sanity, but get some of it back. But with a deep dive like this, unfortunately, you have to stay in the dive for a while. One thing that we're taught by scuba divers is you never surface too quickly, or else you'll get the bends. And so I realized that when I was going on this deep of a dive, going spelunking, if you will, into the cavernous holes of DSP, which is a phrase I never thought I would say without vomiting repeatedly into my mouth, I couldn't surface too quickly. I had to make sure that I stayed down there for a hot minute and get my hands on all the information, all the research I possibly could, and only then, when I was good and ready, slowly resurface and bring myself back into the world of the same.
No, here at the DIA, we cover a lot of your therapy as well as those herbal supplements because, well, we here believe in the herbal supplements as a very necessary part of surviving the pig roach. Now, when we read your writing here, we were very intrigued about the body language as well as his key catchphrases, if you will, that key language, you know what I mean? Like the wait a minute, or baiting out a cheer, or the various different ways he tries to go ahead and keep that pignosis rolling, if you will. Why don't you give our audience here on the Gentleman's Club a little deeper dive on that kind of stuff?
Well, as it pertains to the body language, I had a couple of guys at R&D work on analysis of videos that we knew to be true in Dave's case. When it comes to the escort saga, for example, we know that he did not actually hire an escort, at least at this point in time. And I actually referenced that in the write-up, that there are certain micro-expressions there that exhibit either shame or guilt. If you track his eye movements, he goes back to actual visual memory. There's plenty of great write-ups. Getting a quick shout-out, by the way, to a former YouTube channel known as Bombard's Body Language. She is absolutely wonderful. And if you Google that, you should be able to find her new channel as well. And she talks about body language. She talks about tracking eye movements to see what type of memory is being accessed. Whether it's creative memory, as in you're manifesting something new on the fly, if it's visual memory, recalling something that has actually happened to you, if it's memory of the other senses, whether it be oral or olfactory, and also the eye movements that generally are associated with either outright lying or half-truths. And when you look at the escort saga, his body language sings with him, to borrow a phrase from Bombard's Body Language, meaning that it's telling the same story that he is. Now, there are little microexpressions that show a little bit of shame or guilt, which means that, and this is pure conjecture, I want to point that out, that he may have at one point dabbled in hiring escorts, but in this particular case, he absolutely did not. And then we took that footage and we used it as a baseline to contrast it between that and things that he says about his taxes, or when he reminisces about Project 7 and how that all went down with Randall Howard, and the word usage that he uses. He was very emphatic in denying the escort saga. He flat out said, no, this did not happen. No, I did not hire an escort. No, I did not do this. And those are usually indicators of someone who is being truthful, at least at that point in time. When you're talking about someone who is not being truthful, they will often repeat the question before answering it. They, instead of giving an outright denial, will provide an analogy instead of directly referencing the situation. And there will always be a constant overemphasis on the truth, which is something I think even Phil's most ardent defenders can say is part of his regular vernacular. How many times do we hear, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you guys, or to be honest here, or real talk, or this isn't even a lie, which he has said a couple of times. I'm not even lying here. Which that one is of particular interest to me because that is someone who is not pathological in their lying, meaning that they don't have some neurochemical imbalance, they don't have some psychological predisposition to believe what they're saying is true when it's not. But instead, someone who is fully aware that oftentimes he is not being truthful with what he's saying, and then he'll go back and say, I'm not even lying here, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's creating in his mind, his own contrast between what he's saying at that point in time which then again is still a lie, and stuff that he is known to have been a lie in the past. And that's really what this write-up is about. It's about the body language and how oftentimes it doesn't jive with what he's saying and with the word usage with what he's saying. And from that, we can kind of create a map into the pig roach's brain and hopefully find a way to create our own little specialized fit for a pig roach lie detector.
Okay, well that sounds fantastic. I know we need a pig roach lie detector. I mean, I have a background in security work personally, and I've grown really accustomed to picking up on people's cues on how their body language rolls and how they speak and talk. And it's pretty easy to decipher somebody once you have that tool base to work with. And it seems like you have researched the pig roach quite a bit here. And to me, one of the more interesting aspects about him is how he treats his own fan base. Do you have any insight on his interactions with the pig roach cult overall?
That actually was part of the write-up, and I would love to hear both your and GTG's take on this, because I don't think that one man can delve into this topic alone without someone to pull him out. So I will be relying on my superiors to make sure I don't fall into the sunken place. But really, it's an abusive relationship. He's established this sense of dominance over individuals, and through that, he's ostensibly manifested this sphere, which we often call the DS-sphere of influence. To reference a horror movie that I really, really enjoy, I think it's quite underrated, by Mike Flanagan, called Oculus. Mike Flanagan's the same man that did the wonderful Netflix series, The Haunting of Hill House. In the film Oculus, the object that caused all of this evil was called the laser glass. And they realized that the laser glass only had a certain sphere of influence, that beyond a certain distance, you were immune to its effects. And I think that's kind of how Phil works. I think his sphere of influence is his chat. In fact, I'm pretty sure that if most of the people that blindly follow him took a couple of weeks away from his chat, they would come back in and go, wait a minute, why have I been giving money to a person that demeans me, that denigrates me, that calls me an idiot, that says that I'm worthless, that says that I'm stupid for suggesting something. And you can see those mannerisms, those little idiosyncrasies in Phil's behavior when he talks about people being stupid because he tried something that they suggested in a game and he failed once. Most recently, through his Resident Evil 2 playthrough, he wound up lambasting, I believe it was Bionic Coot, who made the suggestion that he shouldn't be so frivolous, as Phil is wont to do with everything in his life, especially his spending, with the shotgun app, because of how valuable it actually was. And Phil went on like a 5-minute tirade about how stupid Bionic Coot was, how he should shut the fuck up. Phil's the gamer. Phil's the one that's playing the game on the stream. Everyone's there to see Phil. And in doing so, he keeps everyone else in mind. It's kind of like...
Yeah, wasn't that at the same time where he got a gifted sub too, which Phil saw, and then he continued that rant right in Bionic Coot's direction, if I remember it correctly.
Yes, you would be absolutely correct. That is exactly what happened. And I think it's kind of, not to conflate this with actual atrocities that have happened throughout the course of human history. So anyone there that gets upset listening to this saying that I'm conflating it with slavery or the Holocaust, keep in mind that I'm using very, very extreme examples. But during the times of slavery and the Holocaust, let's say someone did not want to work because they couldn't anymore. They physically could not stand up and do what was being asked of them. The most effective means to get everyone else back to work was to make an example of that one individual, whether it was physical torture or outright execution. And that was one hell of an inspiration for the other people to go, no, my back's not as bad as I thought it was. Shout out to Seattle Air. But it's not as bad as I thought it was. I can get back to work. I can do this. I can make sure that things are working well, that the trains are running on time. And I think that's what Phil does. Every once in a while, to keep everyone else in line and keep them from speaking up, he will target someone that he thinks is worthy that day. And in his mind, he will create a legitimate reason for which that person is worthy. In this case, Bionic Coot, he prefaced it with, "You've been saying shit for a long time." That's one of his great fallbacks. You've been a detractor for a long time. You've been trolling for a long time. You've been saying negative shit in the chat. You've been bringing everyone else down. And he never directly references the instances in which these things occurred. He'll never say, "Hey, remember 2 weeks ago, Bionic Coot, when you said this?" Or, "You did this." It's always speaking in these such broad vagaries that allows the other people to go, "Oh, I guess that might be true. I guess maybe Bionic Coot did do that, or did say that." But they never stop to think, in their own minds, I can't cite a specific example in which Bionic Coot said something, or did something. They just listen to Phil and go, "Oh, well, Phil said it, so it must be true." And when he's done picking his target, it brings everyone else back in line. You'll notice that there's a bit of a trend that when he does rant on somebody, he will get a brief. It's usually not very long. I'm sure Phil's very aware of what it's like to not be very long, but a very brief spike in either resubscriptions or a gifted sub or two or some cheers or some tips, almost as if it snaps everyone else awake. And, oh, well, we got to get back in line or else we might be next. And I think that's really how Phil operates.
I'd agree with that. I mean, I've been around this for a long time now, almost 10 years. And I've seen him go ahead and start bit cheer wars. I've seen him just go ahead and wait and be like, "Oh yeah, he made it to the top of the leaderboard right now, but who knows who can be next? Oh, wait a minute, there's a new cheer." And it goes on and on and on. But the only person who I have seen in recent times who got berated by Phil to only turn around and have chat get his back was Swaggins. And I thought it was a new chapter. I thought that we had a new saga coming our way. But instead, Swaggins cucked out, gobbled up Phil's balls, and decided to go ahead. And now he seems to be throwing 50 cents each time he throws a paragraph his way. I saw it earlier today during the Dark Souls stream.
I'm not actually surprised by that thing with Swaggins, but I'll hop on that in just a second, because his mother's been waiting. I do have a question though to Mick as it pertains to the War Dog leader situation, where, as you said before, as you've already stated about him choosing a target for the day, the flavor of the day, if you will, and having his go, getting his spike in views and subscriptions and so on and so forth, and maybe even a bit of a emotional high to some degree, with almost getting drunk off his own power. Would you consider the War Dog leader situation a complete and utter backfire, a complete act of fuckery that he wasn't expecting? Would you consider that an outlier of a situation that normally falls in line, which is normally the average, not the average, but the regular stock and go? What is your thoughts on that? And what is the research department kind of taking about that situation?
What's funny is that is almost a zero sum. There's not really a loss to be had there. I've never spoken with War Dog Leader myself. However, my good friend Declan Reed has, and from what I've gleaned from the conversation that Declan had with War Dog Leader was that it was a conversation that was based off of truth and sincerity and genuity. And they bonded over the fact that they had both lost siblings in their life. There didn't seem to be an air of trying to pull one over or using something as horrific as the loss of a sibling to troll Phil or say, well, I can do this and I just had this happen, so you should be able to do this, which was really the catalyst for Phil going on that rant to begin with. And under normal circumstances, I would absolutely agree with you that there should have been a backlash. And to some extent, there was. So it was an outlier in the sense that he did lose some fans. But the reason that I say it's zero sum is that people that were on the fence, people like Master Saru Watari, people like Poopster, who are consistent cheerers and cheerleaders for Phil's chat and for Phil's streams, they wound up digging their heels in deeper. And they dug those heels right in and said, no, this is the line. We're not going to move. We're going to form the phalanx as if we're somehow Phil's Spartans. And no one's going to get past this. And they actually thought that Phil was the moral and ethical victor in that exchange between himself and War Dog Leader. So it's really interesting to see that there were some people that may have been questioning Phil and went one way and say, this is way too beyond the pale. I can't abide the notion of Phil talking this way about someone who just lost a sibling. But then you had the polar opposite response. There really weren't many people that were very much in the middle going, I don't have a strong opinion about it one way or the other. The people that did defend Phil did so fervently. They did so with such fiery passion, saying, no, War Dog Leader was a troll, he's disingenuous, he's a liar, he didn't really lose a sibling, how dare he try to make Phil's depression stream about himself. And so it should have been an outlier. It should have been this backlash that he lost everything. In my personal opinion, it should have been a backlash where he had lost Twitch completely. However, I don't think sans him threatening to steal the Statue of Liberty at this point, that his Twitch account is really in any jeopardy. That being said, I would have expected him to lose everything, but he didn't. He did lose enough that I think he's changed his mannerisms moving forward so that everything is just a win for him and not playing this risky game of zero sum. Because those that dug their heels in deeper have become more ardent supporters of him and have actually since then cheered more and gifted more subs and tipped more and been bigger fans than they were. But how much should he also lose in the same breath of people that were already on the fence to begin with? His actions certainly didn't endear himself to those people. And so I would agree with you that it's an outlier only insofar as it's changed his ideology on what he will and will not attack. Because, as he says, minimum effort, minimum work, maximum profit. He doesn't want to work too hard, ideologically speaking, one way or the other, to really take any stance that would be considered remotely controversial, because in that moment, he stands the chance of losing something. And I think that's where his mindset has changed.
Very well said. Which leads me to another question, because as it pertains to the War Dog Leader situation, I thought by far that should have been Phil's downfall. It was, the whole situation itself was just pathetic. On Phil's part, I mean, where I'm complaining because there's no one to make me meals, and I'm so depressed, and the world is coming down on me, everybody give me pity. And War Dog Leader, who, as you said, sustained a serious loss, something that took him a very long time to, I wouldn't even say you get over something like that, but to deal with, to cope with, if you will, was like, hey, Phil, I've gone through worse. You can still make meals. It wasn't like he was, like you said, it wasn't like he was trying to bring the spotlight back to him. He was like, Phil, everybody has something weighing on their heart. We can still cope. You have to move forward. Now, that leads to my next question about how you, when you made the analogy of the 300, I thought that was well said, because that's literally what he's down to now. And sadly, the clock is ticking on them. When it comes to Swaggins, what is your feeling on Swaggins in general? My initial feeling, after experiencing a lovely weekend with his mother, comes back to the fact that he's invested so much money into this, trying to chase Vidal or Brightside Viking. He's invested so much money into this, and he has what I would equate to an illusion of power. He can't afford to give it up. So even when he had a chance to bring his ass off the porch, when he had the chance to liberate himself, he was too scared, or he's just invested too deep into it. What's your thoughts on
that? I think that Swaggins is a beta who desperately wants to be an alpha. And when you can't be an alpha in the larger sphere of things, sometimes you do one of two things, really. You resign yourself to the notion that you'll never be an alpha, or, like some wolves will do, is they will break off from the pack from which they were originally assigned, whether it be by birth or by circumstance, and they will find themselves weaker wolves. So, in that regard, they become an alpha. They become the leader of their own pack. But if they ever run into the pack that they split from, they'll get their ass relegated in a second. That's what happens. That's just the nature of the world. So I think that Swaggins is a beta that desperately wanted to be an alpha. And he didn't find success in school. I don't mean academically speaking. I can't speak to his intelligence. Although someone that spends that much money on Phil, I would say that's not really a good marker of intelligence. But someone who was socially awkward, probably did not have a lot of friends, probably someone who was teased on a regular basis, and someone who in the back of their mind thought very highly of themselves, for one reason or another. Maybe they were legitimately very good at something. Maybe they were very bright, or very good at chess, or very good at a certain sport. And they thought to themselves, for that particular reason and that reason alone, that they should be receiving accolades for which they weren't. They were entitled to something. And I think that when Swaggins found the DSP streak, he found that little microcosm in which he could be an alpha. Unfortunately for him, that microcosm is pay to play. You gotta pay to be in it, and if you don't pay, you're kicked right out. And he realized that initially and thought that it was worth the financial investment to get that little modicum of fame or notoriety, or everyone looking up to him. He's the best, he's the strongest, to quote Phil. But now, it just kind of falls to the sunk cost fallacy, which is something that a lot of gamblers fall prey to. It's also known, I believe, as the gambler's fallacy, where you think, well, the next thing I do, that's when it's going to hit. I can't possibly pull myself away from this slot machine now. Someone else is going to take over and they're going to get my winnings. And they don't realize that in doing so, they're just throwing, to quote you and something that you've said multiple times before, they're throwing good money after bad. The money that he's already thrown at Phil is gone. He's not getting it back. But he continues to throw good money after that bad money. Because if he doesn't, then that bad money was a waste. So he's actually continuing to throw money at a lost cause just to justify the previous money that he already threw. And he doesn't realize that it's a bottomless well of greed and deception, and that it'll never pay out. it'll never give him what he wants, which is that validation, that recognition, that feeling of having either moral, ethical, or intellectual superiority. And if it does, it'll only be very temporary. Eventually, he'll wake up and go, I spent 5,000, 10,000. Some people have spent more than that on film. I could have bought a car. I could have taken a girl out to a nice restaurant, and I could have taken out Seidella's mom and just slayed it later. He could have done so many things with that money. By the way, shout out to Seidella's mom. While I have not had the pleasure quite yet, HGTG here does share the cookies. And thank you very much. I hope one of these days I get to visit you for a fresh batch myself. And yeah, I think that that's what it is for him. I think that he desperately needs that validation. And if he stops now, it makes everything that led up to this point not worth it without realizing that it already isn't worth it.
Now, one more thing before we actually get into the main course of all this. As you've summed up Swaggins, so we agree on pretty much all of it. Looking at Phil's fan base as a whole, looking at the final 300, if you will, what is your overall analysis of the group itself? Do you look at it as I do, where you have a semblance of a hierarchy, where you have people who are just willing to throw that money out to have something to hold on to, despite the fact there is no turnover? It's all going to just pretty much just poof, just like that. Or, and then you just start getting into tiers where people are trying to either build their confidence to it, or they don't feel a need to, or you just got a bunch of hate watchers. When you think of the last 300 that really are devoted to Phil, how does the research and development department kind of, what's their analysis on all that?
I think that goes back to the abuse, the abusive movement and the abusive behavior that Phil exhibits. And, you know, if you look at statistics like the NYPD, for example, and you see the number of abuse and domestic violence cases that are reported, you're always going to have that subset of women, not to be gender specific here, but usually it's women that report the cases, that will say, no, he didn't mean it. No, he's actually a good guy. It'll be different this time. Now, I fell down the flight of steps. I was just given encouragement to do so. And I think that's kind of how it is with that remaining 300, that they have been really hypnotized. We joke about it a lot here. We joke about it a lot in detractor circles about pignosis. But to an extent, that really is what it is. When you've been told on a daily or weekly or monthly basis that you are looking at the one true king, you are looking at the man who was the progenitor of the Let's Play. You're looking at the man who has a 10-year, almost at this point, an 11-year legacy. You feel like you're part of something. And these are things that Phil used to openly denigrate when he talked about leaving Twitch. He said things that he would never be the person that would say, welcome to the bro army, welcome to the this, and make people feel special. But that's exactly what he's doing. He's making people feel special, not through caring about them, but through sparing them. When you have an Old Testament wrathful God, and the wrathful God spares your village, in the minds of the spared, that is a merciful God. In the minds of those burnt to a crisp, that is a very vengeful and wrathful God. So I think that these 300 are the ones who have been spared, the ones who incur the wrath the least frequently, or sometimes not at all. And in doing so, they believe that they're chosen. They're chosen to be there. They're chosen to be part of this exclusive community that allows them to bond with one another. And they don't realize that they could completely do that independent of film. They could do that in anyone else's stream chat and hold conversations and bond with one another and have a good time watching someone either be really good at video games or really bad at video games. it's whatever they go to Phil's stream to watch. I mean, keep in mind, if you're going to Phil to watch expert gameplay, then I think you need your eyes checked about as much as Phil does. But that being said, regardless of what your original intent is, you can find that elsewhere. But they have gotten to the point where this is their home. And they don't want to be exiled from their home. They don't want to be exiled from the village that was spared. So they're going to dig their heels in deep. They're going to be the 300, as you said. They're going to form that phalanx, and they're going to defend Phil to their death. Now, also, I want to give a quick shout-out to Tyrone and Jim. Thank you guys for penetrating the hot gates. You guys know what I'm talking about. Keep doing what you're doing.
Oh, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I don't know about you, Proper, but I'm willing to sign off on the extra funding for research and development. I'm ready to do that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, in a heartbeat. I mean, Mick here has done so much research on this and has put in some serious time. It's really nice to see somebody do a deep dive and be able to come out in one piece. I mean, as I've stated before, I've been around the game. I witnessed VSV just get ran over and sacrificed to kiwi farms, which isn't the nicest place in the world at times if you go ahead and go there, like I do frequently, because they will run you over if you act out of line, as I expect any other community to. If you go in there shooting your shit and it just comes up bad, they're going to run you over. And I got a little dose of it one time, and I had to go ahead and check myself. And that's what I expect out of people in this community that we're building. I mean, we do not need a repeat of the SOK. We need somebody who's as strong as them, who can go ahead and be able to push topics, but at the same time show a little bit of, you know, the ability to hold back and not kick, you know, a dying dog.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's the hard part, though. I think, because I don't think outside of those who were directly involved with that whole situation, as it pertains to SOK, excuse me, there are very few people who actually have talked about what happened or what do they think that went wrong. And, I mean, as you look at it, I mean, I don't think it went wrong from the beginning. I mean, a lot of people say that the moment Fred stepped on the scene, it looked like things were going to get bad. But, I mean, maybe it's the power of personality. Maybe it's the same way as DSP in a lot of ways, where he was able to cultivate a group of people around him, and by the power of his personality, and then later on by other means, this is all alleged, by the way, it ended up turning into what it did. And in a lot of ways, maybe if DSP was smarter, he could probably have better control over a group of people if he was a bit smarter about it. But yet again, as Mick said, I mean, you know, the least amount of work, the least amount of effort, maximum profit. But the sad thing is, as it pertains to that, is he won't, if you put in a little bit more effort, there could be more profit. And for whatever reason, he's either too stupid or just plain out too lazy, or both, to do that. That doesn't make any sense. That's like if you clock in, if for example, what's the name of that intern that we lost in that last op? It's whatever. He got disavowed either which way. But when he went out there into the field, it's like, okay, we're going to pay you $100 for every 10 minutes you can survive out there. You know what I'm saying? He puts in 2 hours and then he's done. But if he was willing to stay out there for maybe 4 to 6 hours, it might be a bit more worth. It might be worth his time, and then in turn he can enjoy the fruits of his labor. Phil is no different. If he was willing to do more and, in a lot of ways, be more than what he is, he could do well. And the fact that there's people who are still willing to collaborate with him, who are bigger streamers, bigger YouTubers, who are still willing to have the human decency, and I don't fault them for that, to reach out to this piece of shit and be like, hey, Phil, we still want to help you. It is a testament in a lot of ways, not to just both communities respectively, YouTube and Twitch, but also just general human decency. A lot of people, and that's kind of the problem as it pertains to this whole DSP thing. You have a group of people who come in and they're like, he's an idiot, he's a LARPer, he's bad at video games, why do you shit on him? No one wants to look deeper because, for one way of looking at it, I should say, I think people are afraid to look in the abyss and then see what looks back at them. When you look at Phil, he represents all of the things that are wrong with all of us in some way, shape, or form. Phil, in some way, may live vicariously through that. And he doesn't own it, but he's okay with embracing it. But it's hard for someone else to look at themselves and be like, Jesus Christ. You know what I'm saying? Like, he really is like this. And then take a look at themselves. Because it's almost natural for you to see a situation like that. And then take a hard look at yourself. You see that in Wings' community, to be honest with you. I mean, things are really the wild way. Things are really like Tombstone out there, though. But damn near starting to get into Waco. But you guys, I think you guys are still catching my drift. Another example is, in some ways, the Christian, well, I guess what you would call the Christian community, early on. Like, some of the things that they pulled on him, they had to look deep into the abyss. If not, they jumped right into it. And I don't know if they just didn't want to see what was looking back at them. Maybe they didn't care. Maybe they thought, it's whatever. I'm going to do this for a little while, I'm just going to leave. But the thing is that stuff carries over with you in some way. A little bit, if you let it, I should say. Which is kind of one of the hard things that at least a few people I've talked to. It's one of the hard things that they cope with. Perfect example. When Secret Life had shouts out Secret Life, by the way. He had two former members, friends of his, but he had two former members of an SOK Discord or a Skype call or Skype group or whatever it was. And I remember one of these guys saying, I don't remember his name, who said that he still kind of carried the psychological burden from all that time with Fred and a lot of the abuse and everything. And I'm thinking to myself, this is a man, he's a grown man, he's married. I don't know if he has children, but he's married. And yet, he's still, in a lot of ways, even in small parts of his head, and I don't want to make assumptions, I'm not trying to shit on this individual, but it's like he's still back in that abusive relationship, as you guys used earlier. He's still locked in it, and he hasn't really fully let go yet, despite the fact that, Fred's been gone for a while. He still hasn't been able to let go. And maybe in a lot of ways, in my last question, I've kind of already answered it, in the fact that even if some of these guys were able to break off, go somewhere else, start their own communities, whatnot, the indoctrination it's too deep. It's rooted in so far that there is no getting out for some of them. And maybe, just maybe, that's the true tragedy of the DSP. And yet again, that's why people can't...
I mean, take a look at somebody like BSV. He was super entrenched into the Pig Roach cult. He was excommunicated, ran over. Kiwi Farms just destroyed him outright. And then they turn around and Kiwi Farms now accepts him. They want his opinion on different things and topics because he has that insight for being there for so long and white knighting for somebody as disgusting as DSP. And it's a very interesting thing to see an entire community of people who despise this guy give him the chance to go ahead and turn over a new leaf and to become one of the more interesting people in that form. And it all works back. There's always an out to your situation at hand. And people don't seem to understand it. Say Swaggins wanted to know. He could easily contact one of us, contact and reach out to Kiwi Farms. We're not asking for information, per se, but we know that he has a background in it. We know that it's there. And it's just how much are you willing to spill on him? It's the same thing with Panda. She hasn't talked about it at all as far as I know. And, maybe Phil is paying her to shut her up, as some of us have speculated in the past, which is fine. But, if Kat and Phil actually go ahead and explode, which it really does seem like eventually that's going to happen, because Phil uses people as, tools to go ahead and make more money, as we all three know here. And eventually, but she will take bait. She will take that money, that $800 or whatever she wants to go ahead and set a price for it, and she will give you that insight. And it will happen eventually. I mean, look at what she did already to get to where she is.
But that's kind of the beautiful tragedy of it all. Is the fact that despite how much he shits on these people and he's used them, he's abused them, they're still diehard loyal to him even after the fact. Like for Panda, for example, that you brought up a great example of her. She hasn't said a lick. She erased everything, at least as far as we know, and she's off I hope she's doing well. I'm sure she is. I know she is. So, and we're happy for her for it. And maybe it's best that she doesn't say anything. But you would think, for someone who was deep in the pig pen, deep in Galtopia's trenches for so long, and all the bullshit that she done with it, you can't tell me she couldn't have done a tell-all and asked her for whatever she wanted, and she would have got it. John and Howard, the only thing that they really said was to retort what Phil had said initially about their problem with Project 7 and a couple of those things. They didn't even give us the real shit. Like, there's real deep, dark shit that should have came out, and neither one of them even thought about bringing up. They were just like, hey, we just want to speak our piece on this set of topics. We're done. Anything outside of that, we don't care about. And that was it. End of story. Even when Phil tried to silence them, they were like, you know what? We spent a long time with him. He still kind of, sort of was in this brotherhood that they had over there. They don't bury their own. It's, as I've said in my videos, it's I call it the devil's luck, because no matter how bad a situation should go for him, he still finds a way to get out. It's beautiful as much as it is twisted on just how much people will put up with, but more importantly, how quick they're willing to forget and move on, if you will.
I mean, it even boils down to his own gameplay and streams. He just shit on Apex Legends for days and calling everybody shills who played it. And, because top streamers like Dr. Disrespect, Shroud, people like that were all playing and enjoying the game. Now, I've been able to dabble in the game, and it's fun as hell. And it's enjoyable to play it as a three-party team. And, I get to chill and relax with my good friends and have some fun shooting other people online. And that's what it should be. But he decided to call everybody shills for supporting a game like that because, well, it's the new hotness. And he doesn't support it. However, he went off and then turned the corner, played the game, played it poorly because of his poor communication and teamwork skills due to his paranoia. He went ahead and now he's going to go ahead and stream it tomorrow as well. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. It's like, well, you just shit on the game for a week straight. Why are you doing 3 gameplays of it in a week then? And his cult just follows with him. They say, okay, fine, that's what you're going to play, that's what you're going to play. And to me, now it's a joke. It's like, well, what's next on the topic? I mean, tomorrow is Subnautica. And he would crap on that game too if he wanted to. And somebody would come in there, kiss his ass, and tell him that, oh, no, it's a good reason why you're not playing it. And then he'll be like, no, I really want to play it now. Because somebody bought it for me. Oh, yeah, you should play it. It's a great game. It's definitely one of those things that is the most intriguing part about this whole aspect in his relationship with his chat. Is that his chat, for as much as they call us mentally ill, and as much as they call us sheeple, I look at it as they are sheep. I mean, you speak out of term, you speak out of line, you're banned instantly. You get a manual. And you turn around, and this guy, he will ban you in a heartbeat. He will berate his people for giving him advice that he fails at, as we've seen before, with Bionicute and Swaggins and other people like that. But nobody has a backbone to stand up to him because you can't get 2 words in. And then he shits on us and tells us that nobody will come up to him in real life, when it's not even the case. If I ever saw him in real life and was able to interact with him, he would be an intimidated little beta bitch that he is.
I don't doubt that for a second, but it's just, it's just part of his makeup. It's kind of what makes Phil Phil. It's like you said earlier, like why would you shit on it? Why are you shitting on any new games? Just play the game. But no, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to shill. I'm not going to feed into the bullshit hype. But then a week later, you're playing it and you're saying you're enjoying it. So it's almost like, oh, I'm not like those shills. So that got it early, that were able to get it early, and they're being paid directly, allegedly, and so on and so forth. I'm not them. But a week has gone by. It's things are still simmering with it. People like it. People are, kind of going both ways with it. Oh, now I'm going to play it. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to like it. Like this whole realist guy thing on YouTube doesn't mean shit to nobody but yourself. Even the few people that are in the last 300 don't really care. Just play the games. You have the most easiest position in the world, sort of, outside of haters and trolls and everything else. And, I don't know, gout. All you have to do is play games. Just play them. And you can't even do that right. Having this extra opinion that people are going to shit on you for later is stupid. And if you're really tired of the hater videos, fair enough, Phil. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead and reach out to DSP Archives, reach out to somebody, and set up what Wings did with that whole situation with the Discord. He did it twice, actually. Set up a roundtable discussion and allow us to ask you questions and allow us to address some of the actual concerns or our criticisms of it. You won't do that because Wings, to his credit, he sat there and dealt with that shit for 2 hours altogether and whatnot. I would say after 15 minutes with one person, you're done. You're not going to want none of that. You don't want to confront Tevin. You don't want to confront, you damn sure don't want to confront James the Lesser. I've talked to him privately. You don't want nothing that James the Lesser's bringing. You don't want anything that any of those guys are bringing to you. So, you damn sure don't want what I'm bringing, because you're not enough. You have to bring Swaggins with you, just because I need an appetizer. I need an appetizer. Sorry. You're not going to do that. And if you're not willing to confront any of us, because, we're all scared and shit, then just shut up and play the game. Do what you're supposed to do. Do what butters your bread. If life is so good, then why do you go out of your way to make it hard? If Kat loves you so much, why do you throw so many signals at us to make us believe that she either doesn't live there or she's only staying with you part-time? It's not a matter that the girl doesn't exist. It's just your whole situation's awkward. Oh, I can't stream late, for example. I'm going off on a tangent. I don't stream late because I don't want to keep her up. But then you're extending your streams till like 11 o'clock your time. 12, almost. Oh, I'm staying up so we can cook, and then we stay up till like 3 a.m. and then we go to bed. How's that healthy? I thought you said that she was trying to get you to eat healthy. I thought you guys were trying to have a better lifestyle. So how is that healthy? How does that even make sense? You know what I'm saying? Like, everything that he says about her just doesn't sound right. And you give him a week or two, or as I say on my channel, give him enough rope and he'll hang himself. And it's no different. Give him a couple of weeks and he'll contradict what he said earlier. He's banking on you not remembering it. Therefore, the reason why there's such a conflict, the reason why he hates detractors in general. It's not a matter that we're in here taking his viewership or screwing him out of his money. I'm sure that's an aspect. But really what it comes down to is we call him out on his bullshit and people listen to it.
Yeah, and that's a hard pill for him to swallow because he just loves to pump his ego up. I mean, the ego of him, that's the only thing he has going anymore, is his own ego and his paycheck at the end of the month. I mean, I was listening to him today, and he said that he might have to end his Dark Souls stream early to drive Cat to work. Now, he blamed it upon the snow and things along those lines, but Cat's from Michigan. They deal with snow. It's not a big goddamn deal. I mean, it's snowing here in Oregon right now. Big fucking deal. I'm going to leave Monday morning an hour early or so just to make it to work on time and to take my time to make sure I get there safely because I'm an adult. It's not that hard of a decision to make. However, he makes it a big deal each and every single time that something inconveniences life. And it's hilarious to me that he kind of goes on these rants and tirades and blames us as detractors for pointing out his flaws. But I would expect my own friends to do the same to me. Like if one of you guys went ahead and said, hey, you're not going about things correctly, you need to tone it down or check yourself, I would have to take a hard look at myself because I respect you guys. And I respect the people who follow me on Twitter. I respect the people who drop comments and likes into my videos that I make because I enjoy doing that. And it's the same thing with my work life. If my coworker went ahead and said, hey, your work is kind of shit today, what's going on? You have to look at yourself. But he would make an excuse of it. I'd be like, oh, I didn't sleep well because Kat was playing on the PC all night. He blames other people for his own flaws. And I think if more people realize that he's like that and actually take that piece of knowledge and look at it in their own life, they'll realize that they are not improving their own well-being if they live by Phil's standards of his own character.
Or lack thereof. The fact that you can't expect everybody who watches your videos or watches your content or participates in whatever you do to like everything you do at all times. You need criticism. Like criticism, it's kind of like it's an interesting argument that's going on right now about bullying. How do you feel about kids being bullied, right? I don't know about you guys, but everybody's bullied. You know what I'm saying? At one time or another. Now, I would say the cyberbullying and everything is getting way out of control. But back in Phil's day, you got pressed on the yard, right? And you stood up for yourself and you made shit happen, or you keep taking it. And Phil always came across to me like the person who kept taking it, or the person who had to wait for his friends to step in and kind of and handle it. And that's what John represents, to be honest with you. But I'll get to that in a second. So with that being said, when you look at his internet life, it's all about give me positivity, give me positivity, give me positivity. Because when he was starting off and he was one of those few, that's all he received. Because you were one of the few people that were there. So of course people are going to like your content. Of course you're going to get all this voting because of how YouTube was set up and everything, how to watch Seven and look at archives to see how that whole system worked out or how it was set up. Of course there's going to be a lot of positivity because you were one of the few content creators out there. They never thought about, if I rip this person down, they might stop making content. They didn't think about that back then, or at least I wouldn't think so. So, of course they gave you praise. But the moment he deals with the smallest bit of negativity, and like you said, instead of taking that in, because to be honest with you, if someone's giving you negativity, they must care. They must care about you as a person. They might care about you as a job or in your career in general. They don't want to see people falter. You know what I'm saying? A lot like how that 300 tips have propped up. They're telling you this because they give a shit about you. But Phil, in truth, looks at all of them as detractors. Or they're all potential detractors. His paranoia is to the point now where he can't trust anything or anybody. I doubt that he trusts Kat. I doubt that they sleep in the same room with each other. And for good reason. And not just on his end, but on her end too. You're talking about two people who barely know each other that are in the same house, and you have the nerve to say that you guys love each other. When every time we've seen her on stream, she looked more and more uncomfortable, the longer she sat with you. I saw her, I remember the first time she showed up. It was like 17 minutes or whatever that first video was. And I remember looking at this thing and I was like, she does look very much like those hostage videos that you see online. That's exactly what she looks like, to the T. She looked like she was on something. She looked cloudy-eyed. She didn't really know what to say. And the only time that she actually showed a bit of anything, whether emotion, humanity, or whatever the case may be, is when I'm real. I do exist. For those people who don't, that's Phil. That's Phil talking. That's not her. That was Phil talking through her. When you see everything else after that, everybody looks at it as, oh, she's coming out of her shell. No, it was a further and further decline. The way she dressed, which you could say, if you're not used to seeing a woman naked, is, oh, she's getting more and more revealing. No, it's not. It was someone who was trying to put on a very strong face because of the person that that's next to them. That's Phil probably directing all that. Because Panda used to dress kind of like that. Panda used to carry herself with that type of independence. And it's funny how Phil didn't care much for it when Panda did it. But he'll push that on Kat. But Kat, not to say that she doesn't have it in her, but she doesn't have it in her with you. And then when you look at that Halloween stream, that complete total fuck up, that told me everything I needed to know. It was poorly planned from the beginning. But why would you have her dress up and sit next to you for 3 hours and literally do nothing? You couldn't put her in front of...
Well, that was Tevin's fault, okay? It was all Tevin's fault, to be honest. He chased her away. He made her feel uncomfortable. It wasn't the fact that Phil sat there and said, hey, honey, why don't you go ahead and do us a twirl to go ahead and show his little boys in his chat what his little trophy horse looked like. It was crazy. I would never ask my significant other to show up even to talk here on this kind of stuff. I don't want her near this toxic garbage pit. I mean, I barely survive as is.
and that makes total sense. But you could have had her doing something. I firmly believe this because I've talked to some of the guys here about it. You put her in front of that chat, the money would have rolled in because they'll do anything to get something out of her. Because in truth, gentlemen, we haven't really seen much of anything from her. So putting her in front of that chat and throwing money at it would have worked. But that goes back to what you guys have said earlier. He needs control of that whole situation. And so you're not going to let her play the game. You're not going to she wasn't going to add commentary. You're not going to let her sit in front of the chat and maybe engage with some of those people in there. What was the point of dressing her up? Unless she was planning on going somewhere else later on anyway. Which is what my thought was.
I think that's what it is. I think it was killing two birds with one stone. I think it was, as you said, letting the beta males drool over, which I don't understand anyway, so it's not like she's got enough cake to drool over anyway. But, let's assume she did for a second, And, as you said, she was going somewhere else anyway. But, minimum effort, minimum work, maximum profit. What better way to get money than to have a 3-tiered system like the cake that Kat doesn't have, and the cake that Phil desperately wants to eat. You start off with that top tier, which is beta males drooling over his super real supermodel girlfriend, and then you have the second tier of, Phil now has to play the game alone, like the goodbye horses cheers. Shout out to Buffalo Bill. And then you've got the third tier, which is, it's 7 small. So you get the sympathy cheers, and the sympathy bits, and the sympathy subs. Because now it's someone else's fault. It was that 3-tiered system that he was able to accomplish with the mere fact that he had her there, and then she wasn't. He didn't have to do any work.
And that's exactly what happened. My only misstep, well, there's a lot of missteps in that whole thing. But to throwing Tevin in was literally feeding her to the better man. You saying, it was all Tevin's fault, he ran her off, yada, yada, yada. You literally ran Kat into Tevin's arms. That's pretty much what that was. You made it okay, Phil, for you to sit in the corner and be a cock, while Tevin, praise be almighty, has his way with your girlfriend, your soulmate, the woman that you love, the woman you want to marry, and you were okay with it. That's essentially what you did. Why would you do that? Why would you put a name to the individual who was literally the bane of your existence? And you thought that was going to work. I never understood. Like, Tevin's reaction to it was amazing. But when you really look back, it was one of the most egregious missteps on Phil's part that I've ever heard. It was the dumbest thing he could have ever done, is to go ahead and put a name to, I mean, everybody knew his name anyway, but put a name to that individual and be like, it was all his fault. Like, he wanted them to be like, okay, be my attack dogs and go over there and handle it. Most of them have a tab open when Tevin streams anyway. That's why whenever Tevin says something, it shows up in the chat literally like 10 seconds later. You've turned it into a thing. You've made, not to say that Tevin wasn't already up there, because Heavy is the head that wears the crown. But in truth, you put Tevin on cloud 9 now. He's the go-to. Like, no matter what, you're banned from Phil's chat, you go to Tevin. If you're in Phil's chat and you can't say nothing, you have another tab open with Tevin anyway. So you just comment over there. And you stay with it. And for Phil, as it pertains to the trolling and everything, especially those who are willing to throw money, shut up and take the money. Read the troll cheer and keep it moving. Your ego isn't worth all that if you're willing to beg for money for these children anyway, day in, day out. Saying, oh, my bill's here, my taxes here. Oh, I'm waiting for my parents to kick the bucket, so I need you guys to go ahead and come through with this tax money like, oh, I don't know, like the first week of April, so I can tell my tax attorney to speed his ass up, even though, Phil, you told us like in December that if you did tell him to expedite your process, it was going to cost you like an extra $1,000, which doesn't make too much sense, but whatever. We're not going to break into details right. Now you want them to go ahead and speed up the process with them giving you money so you can handle this situation, so you can see mommy and daddy for the very last time and close the book on that particular part of your life. Your words, not mine, Bill. Why? Why do any of it?
Sorry, that was just an audible sigh for those of you wondering.
That's why I stopped. I'm sorry, man.
No. But for those of you that are curious as to why the audible sigh was there, I'll let the agents in on some news. I do have that good friend I previously mentioned, Declan Reed, who, no one has ever seen us in the same room at the same time, but I promise you he's as real as Cat. It's not a Clark Kent Superman situation, or is it? That being said, Declan also streams, and he lost his father in 2017, in February. And I'm going to speak on his behalf since he's not here, obviously, to speak for himself. But what type of person ever says that? What type of person ever says, and I want your guys' take on this, so, I want the report back from my superior agency. Who the fuck says that? I'm going to close the chapter on this part of my life as it pertains to my parents. I believe that Declan's father's passing was very, very unexpected and very sudden. If I remember correctly, he was in a convention hall helping a friend sell artwork when it happened, when he received the call that his father had passed. And judging from what I know about that whole situation, there's not a moment that goes by that even now, coming up on 2 years in a week, not even a week, no, in exactly a week, 2 years in a week of the anniversary of that passing, that he wouldn't ask for his one more day. One more day watching an Eagles game. Yeah, I guess he happened to grow up in Philly just like I did. Weird coincidence, huh, guys? And one more day watching an Eagles game. One more day just, going out to a bar and shooting the shit. One more day just bonding. Learning something that he already had learned a million times before, but it didn't matter because it's time for family. What kind of person is so callous about the relationship with their own parents, the people that put food on the table, that worked tirelessly to provide you a good life, to give you an education, to give you the things that you wanted in life, sans a Wolverine toy that you're still bitter about fucking 20 years later, and says something as really sociopathic as I want to close this chapter on my life. And that ties into something else that I want to touch on really quickly, but I don't want to dominate the time here. And that is when you were talking about him playing certain video games a week after shitting on the game. Well, recently, to tie that into just basic film mannerisms, he did the exact same thing when he was talking about his parents and saying, oh, yeah, it's not like they're deathly ill or anything, but that's exactly why he told us it needed to happen this year, was because they were ill, because he might never get the chance again. Wasn't that true for every single day that he's not there, that he might never get the chance again? And then he downplays it, oh, it's not a big deal. I just want to go because they're dying to meet Kat. It's not that they're dying, they're just dying to meet Kat. And yet, a month ago, he was saying that he was going to close that chapter on his life because they're both in poor health. It's the same thing with him playing a video game a week after shitting on it. Oh, this game's fucking terrible, and a week later, oh, everyone get hyped for my super chill stream of Apex Legends. Or I'm sure he's going to do the same thing with Anthem after saying that he knows for a fact that game's going to be bad. It's because his chat has a goldfish memory. And they have to. Abuse victims have to have a goldfish memory. Because if you're laying awake at night and you're remembering all those times that it wasn't you falling down the stairs with a little extra motivation, but you were actually pushed, then you're going to leave. You're going to eventually come to that realization that this is not a good situation to be in. His chat has to have a goldfish memory for protection purposes. It's dissociation. They don't let themselves remember what was said a few days prior, or a week prior, or a month prior. Because if they did, then they wouldn't be there. They would say, wait a minute, this is logically inconsistent. Even when it comes to something as important as the reasons for which he is doing fundraisers. I'm sorry, let me rephrase.
Raising funds.
Raising funds, because apparently there's a fundamental difference between those two things. He told us in 2017, into early 2018, that he needed to raise a ridiculous amount of money to pay for his taxes. Now, towards the end of 2018 and early 2019, he says, I put $10,000 worth of taxes on my credit cards. Well, why did you do that if you raised the $10,000 in taxes? Well, that money had to have gone somewhere. Where did it go? Oh, that's right. It was used to move Kat in across the country, get her set up, buy her clothing, get her a cell phone, potentially get her a car, although there's speculation as to whether or not that's true. Make sure that she gets set up with her job. All of those things cost money. All of those things cost money. And roughly about $10,000, I would assume. So, why is it that they don't remember, oh yeah, all of these things are going straight to taxes? I promise they are going straight to taxes. And now, a year removed from that situation, they say things to the effect of, oh, well, didn't you just say that you put it on credit cards? Well, yeah, that's what I had to do. I had no other option. But you were given the $10,000. Who there would stand there and hold the $10,000 in your hand and say, I'm going to put myself further in debt, especially when a few months from now I'm going to bitch about the fact that the Fed is raising interest rates. It's completely logically inconsistent. And it's the same thing with his parents. Oh, they're dying. They're sick. I need to go see them. Let me play the sympathy card. He did the same thing with, what was it, ITG Jake, or I think it was ITG Jake, who he called him a fucking asshole and said, I'm pouring my heart out to the stream. Well, if you're pouring your heart out to the stream, that means that something serious is going on. That means that there is, without a doubt, a serious thing going on with your parents. For you to be so personal, especially for someone who is now very guarded with their personal life, or so they claim, and saying things to the effect of, my dad has heart issues, he has the same back issues I do, this might be the last year. They're telling me it's okay to share with you guys these harsh realities. He said that it was okay to share with us the harsh realities of what's going on, and how they understood his financial situation and they were going to pay for everything. And now a month and a half later, he's saying, no, they're fine. Yeah, they're not feeling too well, but they're just really dying to meet Kat. Who is so bereft of emotion or empathy that they can use their own parents as a card like that and flip that card on a whim and say they're dying, they're not, they're dying, they're not, they're dying, they're not. Oh, it's just this. I mean, what's going to happen when they do pass? Is he going to go to the funerals? I don't think so. I think he'll give us a reason why he can't go to the funeral, and then probably use that for more pity money. But you have people out there who have lost parents at a younger age than where Phil is currently, because it's not a normal occurrence for people to pass that young. That would do anything to spend an extra day, a single extra day, to get to say goodbye one more time, to get to say I love you one more time. And yet here's this asshole talking about, oh, my parents might be sick and they might die, but it's just a chapter in the story that's me, because I'm the hero in my own tale. I'm sorry to go off on a rant, but that's kind of where I am with that whole situation.
Well, that's no problem. I mean, I grew up in a household where my mother was a firefighter, and I learned very young that the words "I love you" were the most important thing you said to somebody at the end of a conversation. Because with that kind of a profession is you don't know if your loved one's going to show up at the end of the day, at the end of the watch, the end of the shift. But you know that no matter how mad you were at them, no matter how you felt, you saying those three little words meant the world to them, and it also meant the world to you, just in case if shit went sideways. I mean, personally, my father was in the hospital recently, and it showed up unexpectedly. Turns out it wasn't a very big deal after all. But it was enough to make me hit pause on anything I was doing in a heartbeat. If he said, show up now, it would have been an 8-hour car drive, and I would have done it in 6. Because you have to value those moments, and to see him, DSP, say these things and play it off like it's nothing, it is very disheartening for somebody who has very tight family ties, as I'm sure, your friend Declan has too. It's family is the most important thing out there. They should outweigh your job. They should outweigh your friends. And if you're lucky, like I am, your friends are your family. I've driven a 14-hour drive to pick up a friend just to go see a friend in their last moments. And it isn't easy. And it doesn't feel good. And things still hurt many years later. And to hear somebody like him just go ahead and flip it on and off like it doesn't matter shows us really how he feels towards people he cares about. And to boil it all down, is the only person he cares about is Phil. He doesn't care about Kat, doesn't care about his friends, which he has none, by the way, because you and I earlier, Mick, were talking about his potential wedding, and that if it ever happened, there would be no bridal party. They don't have friends. He would stream that and beg for pity bucks, and then claim on stream that he had a wedding attended by 400, 500 people, when in actuality it was 4 people, 5 people, and a streaming laptop. And that is a sad thought. And I don't wish it even on him. I wish he would actually go ahead and try to make friends. But he doesn't seem to find worth in making friendships like I have with you guys or anybody else in our community. And it's one of those things that I think more people should look into. And the more you realize that Phil does not care about other people, the more you realize that he wants to just use you as an ends to make money or to make a point. It reveals more of his flaws than he's ever expected.
But maybe that comes back down to the more vulnerable aspect of it. Now, obviously, I haven't had nearly as many emotional type of situations as the two of you have. All I can really tell you is as a kid, my mother and father made sure to be like, hey, come here, give me a kiss, tell me that you love that I love you and you love me back and whatnot, despite friends, despite people waiting on the bus or whatever the case may be. And as when you're young, I don't know, I didn't think anything of it. It is what it is. If I gotta throw some hands after school, no big deal. It's whatever to me. But then you get up to a certain age and you start thinking, oh, come on, ma. But at the same time, I still did it, and I thank God for her making sure that I kept doing it, and for myself just doing it. Because, like you said, it's one of those things that you don't forget those moments. And for Phil, well, fuck Phil. For me, it means everything. Because the harsh reality is one day that's not going to happen. There's going to be a last day, despite whatever the circumstance may be. Now, that's looking into the long term. It's not something that any of us want to think about. But it's something that's going to happen. That's why you appreciate what you have now. For Phil, outside of the usual, everybody's disposable to him, everybody's there to be used, so on and so forth, is it also possible that he doesn't want the emotional baggage that comes with something like that? Maybe he himself is scared of being hurt when mom and dad are gone. So he has to have a tough standing or a hard line standing right now, trying to act like he's tough. But when he sees them, and keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, he hasn't seen his parents in 4.5 years?
Yeah.
No. He's seen them before that because they came and fixed that toilet, which is egregious in its own right. Going clear across country to fix your incompetent son's toilet because he was too lazy and too cheap to pay someone else to do it. This is ridiculous. Okay, so let's say,
don't forget that.
oh yeah, that too. All right, so let's say
we did that.
Yeah, don't forget that. Okay, so let's say he hasn't seen his parents in 2.5 years or whatever the case may be. If his parents are as sick as he says they are, what is he going to do when he gets off that plane? And let's say they're a little bit worse for wear, that they look different than what they did the last time they saw him. Do you expect the man to break down? Do you expect him to try to stay face for cat? At the end of the day, none of that shit means a damn either which way. Phil, for Christ's sake, these are your parents. These are the people who, no matter what, love you unconditionally. They are the people who, no matter what, will always have your back and always be in your corner, even if you're wrong. They'll chastise you and they'll get their 2 cents in because they're your parents. They're supposed to. But they're the people that are always in your corner. When they finally go, there's no one else for you, Phil. And then this extended family that you have out there, Phil, like, for example, asshole, this cousin that you have who allegedly is on drugs or whatever the situation is, that's someone that you need to be reaching out to. That's someone, Phil, who needs maybe that Seattle air, who needs a change of pace. You have another room. You can put her in. You can give her the opportunity. You can give her a second chance, which is why you went to Seattle in the first place, was to get a second chance. You can extend that to somebody else. I'm saying that to you, Phil, because Lord, God forbid if anything happens to her, and I don't know her. I don't have any attachments to her. I'm not obligated to her in any way, shape, or form. But God forbid if something happened to her, I would feel you haven't, and she's not, I wouldn't say she's a nobody, but I don't know her. She doesn't hold any attachment to me whatsoever. But this is someone you were raised with. You owe her a little more than just, oh, I got a cousin out there. I don't know. She has her own problems. I don't got time for that shit. I don't know what she's doing. Because, and this is a very, very strong possibility, gentlemen. What happens, Phil, if when your parents finally check out for the last time, and I hate to make it sound that way, so my apologies. What happens, Phil, when you find out that your inheritance has been split between the two of them? Then what? Now you have to care. being that everything that you have is split in half. What if, Phil, certain aspects of that will is only to her because she's been around? And maybe she was a burden to them. Maybe they had to deal with her going through withdrawals at night, all the throwing up, all the this, that, and third. I've seen some of that. Not with family in particular, but I've seen some of that. And so on and so forth. And what happens, Phil, when they're like, you know what, we want to make sure she's taken care of if something happens? Because wherever her parents are, they weren't there. So what happens, Phil, that the golden egg that you're waiting for isn't there when time comes up? Then what? Tell me what your life's like then, Phil. Tell me how hard it is then, Phil. Tell me how mad you're going to be at mommy and daddy over that, Phil, when there's nothing left for you because they gave it to the person who they felt that needed it. Because, yet again, ladies and gentlemen, and for some of you who may have actually heard my broadcast, you're probably one of those, well, there's at least one of you, who are probably like, oh, it's messed up that you don't want him, that you want him to lose his house. I don't want him to lose his house. I want him to fight for it. If he gives a damn about it so much, he'll fight for it. If he loses that house, so what? He has a condo back in Connecticut he goes to. Oh, well, fair enough. He has his parents' home he can go back to. Phil, for all of his faults, does have options. More than most. I don't have to give him sympathy about something that he wants. Keyword. He wants to keep. If he's not willing to fight for it, then he should lose it. And if he does lose it, he has a backup plan. I don't care if he doesn't want that backup plan. I don't care if he doesn't like that backup plan. He has one. So he should thank God for that. Or whatever. whatever he prays it. He has that. And then he has a backup plan on top of that. Shit. Wings barely has that. Wings has to sit there and ask his mom to restructure the will, so if something happens to her, he doesn't lose the house that he's paying for. Wings has it a lot worse than Phil does. So there's my situation on that.
It's funny that you do that, though, because don't you think that actually that pertains to more than one situation in his life? Think about it.
Absolutely. That's why
think it specifically about his girlfriends. He didn't fight for Leanna. Why? Because he already had a backup plan. And if he doesn't fight for Kat, there's already this speculation that he's got those couple of Twitter girls that he's been all chummy with, because he's got another backup plan. He just lets the chips fall where they may. He doesn't care about putting into work because he always has a backup plan. Phil's never hit rock bottom. Phil's never been close to hitting rock bottom with any aspect of his life, whether it be relationships, finances, losing the house. Hitting rock bottom is wondering where your next meal is coming from. Hitting rock bottom is wondering, am I going to have a roof over my head tonight? And if I don't, where can I find one? Or do I have to make one? I've seen those situations. I've unfortunately seen them firsthand. He hasn't hit rock bottom. But I'm curious as to how he would react if he does. I don't wish it upon him, but how would he react? Would we actually see a side of Phil that is Phil the fighter? Or does he not have that in him?
Oh, that fighting spirit is going to get drained out of him completely. He doesn't understand what it is like to fight tooth and nail and grind your working hands down to the bone just to make sure that you can eat for a night or to go ahead and sleep comfortably for a change. He's been handed things to him, and a lot of it has to do with, like GTG just said, the devil's luck. And it's not a shocker to see him, take this kind of minor setback, like maybe having to sell his house and move to somewhere else more viable, as, he thinks it's the end of the world, when all it is just restructuring and figuring out where you fit better into the world at hand. He can make a killing if you move somewhere back east, say Texas, like he looked to originally. But he didn't want that because Seattle has that air of clout around it. You know, it had what's going on. And his ego can't take that hit. And, you know, to watch somebody like him cry upon all of these different losses in his life, it's pathetic and it's sad. And to start wrapping this whole podcast up, I mean, I expect Cat to eventually leave him to all of a sudden lose the house for who knows what, but he will find somebody else to blame besides himself. And he will either A, have to go back to Connecticut, or B, drum up enough pity bucks to move somewhere else. And he will be able to carry on for another 10 years plus, not having any more job experience or real world experience to go ahead and fall back on. I can't imagine him trying to find a different job other than begging for money on the internet right now.
Sadly, that's the end of the road for him. That's what's been waiting for him. He knows it. He knows it just as well as any of us. So, like when James Lester, for example, shouts out to James Lester, says that, hey, he might actually have money stashed away somewhere. Maybe he does. In a lot of ways, I hope he does. I hope he has something put away just in case shit happens, which is the whole point anyway. But if he doesn't, then it's checkmate. And it's checkmate in the worst way. Now, to answer Mick's question, what do I think is going to happen when he hits rock bottom? He takes the coward's way out. When everything that he has is exhausted, all resources, can't bleed another pig, pay piggy for anything. There isn't another, sadly to say this, emotionally damaged woman online that he can't take advantage of. When all of those options are gone, he takes the coward's way out. It's the only way. It's the only way. Because it's in his character. There are some people who are not built to endure. There are some people who don't have it in them to take the cards that you're dealt and make the best hand out of it that you possibly can. It doesn't matter at the end of the day what people think of you. It's what you think of yourself. At the end of the day, I can't live my life through other people on what they think that, I should be doing or vice versa or what the case may be. I can't do that. I'll never get anywhere. So, like, for example, when you have an ongoing criticism in detractor circles about, this person's just copying this person's doing this person's doing that. That's a dismissive way to being like, I don't like your content, or I'm afraid that your content might be just as good as this person who I praise, so I don't want no parts of that. Then just move along. And that's what hurts people the most, Phil especially, is his opinion needs to mean something. Everybody else's opinion is criticism. He doesn't care about that unless he can benefit from it. But for Phil, when I say something, you should flock to me and agree with it because I've been around for a long time. I put up 70,000 videos altogether, but it's like 50,000 plus on one channel. I put up a lot of content. I have seniority. You owe me. You know what I mean? So take my opinion for what it is and move with it. But the thing is no one cares. Hence the reason why Phil continues to spurg out. Continuing why his drinking habits are the way they are. Further, why he has to stay up late at night. Because if you guys really want to know what I think he does, outside of watching wrestling and Netflix, is he's on Twitter. And everybody he has blocked, he's probably looking at us in incognito mode, seeing what we're saying about him. He's on Kiwi Farms, seeing what's being said about him. And that's how his nights are filled. And that goes ahead and fuels his fire for the next day. The same negativity that he said once in an FGC video. I use that. Well, I think he said in a regular video too. I use that hate to empower me and make me a strong person, which is the most pathetic thing I've ever heard. By the way, but because self-esteem is something that's self-generated. If you need something else to give you that, that's not self-esteem, and you got a problem. You got a big problem, especially if you're online. Because fake validation is very easy to absorb, but you can't do anything with it. It's like taking in like empty calories. It just doesn't do anything. It's not worth anything. But anyway, that's a whole other subject. It's the fact that it's one of the main factors about Phil's personality that will lead to his end at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, it'll be by his own hand. Now, most people will disagree and be like, "Oh, he won't do that. He's too prideful." No, he's not. What you see is is a simulation of pride. There is no real pride. When I look at Phil, it's the same thing that Phil looks at when he looks at my videos, because I know he does that, or he's seen a few of them anyway. When I look at Phil, I see a shell of what he wanted to be, and it's not there. So picking him apart isn't difficult. I encourage people to do it. Don't do it full time. That's egregious. This is coming from someone who does that full time. But put a video out, and I guarantee you Phil will eventually see it if there's enough traction. And it's going to hurt him. Now see how he reacts to it the next day. You want even more Apple proof about that? Look at what happens when Tevin restreams. Look at how Phil reacts the next day. He never calls Tevin out directly anymore because he's given Tevin too much clout, air quotes. He gives Tevin too much light, air quotes. But you can see in his mannerism, in his behavior, that it curves slightly. We've talked about this earlier on in this podcast, where either he tries to build more of an emotional bond between them, or he comes across a bit more aggressive to make himself seem bigger than they are. All of that right there is nothing to me. It's nothing to any of us, to be honest with you. Because when you meet a man like that in real life, he's nothing. He's nothing at all. He's merely skin and bone. He's flesh. And that's it. There's no heart that beats there. He bleeds. Pussy bleeds too, last time I checked. But that don't mean that he has heart. And because of that, that's why Phil stays in that house. That's why Phil's scared to leave unless Cat's with him. That's why he doesn't want to do anything for himself. Because the man has gotten to the point in his life where he can't fight anymore. He can sit on his little love seat and spew whatever venom he wants. But in truth, when it comes to actually addressing some of the criticisms, he can't do it. And that's why the outside world scares him. That's why this world, whatever this thing is that Phil has, he has to rule it with an iron fist. Failure, when it does come, even if he does have a plan in the slightest, if that house is gone, if he loses that house, Phil Burnell is going to be gone not too long after that. I don't wish this upon him, ladies and gentlemen. I want to make that abundantly clear right now. I do not wish death on no man, because there's no coming back from that. What I can tell you is I've seen the weakness that's in that man's heart. And I use the term man loosely. And it's not there. You can see it in his writing. You can see it in his actions. You can hear it in him. The candle's about to dwindle. And unless he's really willing to make a serious change moving forward, when that house is gone, Phil goes with it.
That's a really good point, I think. And I just want to touch on one thing real quick, and I should probably rephrase that. I want to comment on one thing, given what I'm about to say. We've already seen the type of venom he spews on that love seat, and it is white, sticky, and not in great abundance.
He'll never live that down either.
Should he?
He'll never live that down. Oh my god!
I would love for someone to make a video of the cat, sitting down with a love seat or getting back up, and just adding the sound effects of the crunch or the having to peel off the love seat.
Hey, I've got to make dinner after this, so yeah.
It's so bad.
Like a sticky movie theater floor, just.
Oh, that's so bad.
You step in it and you're like, what are these fucking Juju beats. God damn it! Like,
that's so bad. Oh.
Well, gentlemen, I appreciate you coming here to the Gentlemen's Club and spending some time here with me. Do you have anything that you guys care to plug? Let's start off with GTG. You got anything coming up?
Anything coming up? Yeah, actually, I think I'm thinking about doing a premiere stream for Dragon Ball Heroes. I'll basically be going through episode 1 through 7. So that might be fun. So something to look out for with that. And working on Valentine's Day is coming up, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm thinking about something special for Panda and Cat. Maybe a small tribute.
Shit.
Not sure. You know, for the ladies of Phil's, all the ladies in Phil's life. That's pretty much it. Other than that, after I get everything together, hopefully the news day gets back to where it needs to be.
That sounds fantastic. Hopefully you will include Sidella's mom because of those fantastic cookies that she makes.
Absolutely.
And
everybody loves milk and cookies.
And how about you, Intern Mick? You got anything coming up that you might want to go ahead and plug? Or anybody you might want to plug?
Nothing coming up myself because I really don't do anything. I am just this random individual who decided to put my job application in for the R&D department of the DIA, and I was lucky enough to get the job. But as far as other people are concerned, totally not the same person, but you should check out my good friend Declan Reed on Twitter. That's twitter.com/real Declan Reed, REED. It's a pun on novels because he is a novel, and that book should be coming out sometime next year. And also, even though they don't need it, shout out to Dame Pesos, Medicare, Andy Worski, Ethan Ralph, all of the people that make YouTube such a wonderful place to be on a daily basis. And finally, in agreement with you guys, shout out to Sidella's mom because I also love milk and cookies. I mean, milk and cookies. It's always a great way to end the day.
Indeed.
I'd agree. Well, gentlemen, why don't we go ahead and call this good here? Go grab a couple cocktails, have a few laughs, and enjoy the rest of our evenings. So, thanks guys for coming out and enjoying another episode of the Gentlemen's Club. And hopefully we will see you again next time on another episode. And we'll be signing out and enjoying those cocktails.